Welcome once again to an exciting edition of The Upgrade. My name is Gary Muttley. He is the one and only
Len Carmichael, Landmine Studios. What's up, Gary?
What's up is that we were wrong.
We were?
Shocking as it may be, because we have quite a track record lately. We said that shit would probably get worse for Trump, with Trump, but then a funny thing happened. Do you know what that is?
That motherfucker went away. He just dipped out.
Well, I wouldn't say he went away. It's funny how when you take away a bully's Twitter account, suddenly he becomes a puppy.
Yep. I mean, he got silenced across the board.
He got shut up with the quickness.
I wonder, you know what I'm wondering?
What's that?
If he will ever gain access back to the internet. I mean, right now, as that meme says, his phone is a brick. He can't do shit. He can't go on Twitter. He can't go on Facebook.
Go on Pinterest.
He can't go on Instagram. He can't go on Pinterest. YouTube is like, nah, kick rocks, bitch. Like, there is, there's really nowhere for him to be.
He can't even shut down. He can't even go on sugardaddy.com.
Yo, my favorite one is the meme of him talking to the two black ladies, and it says, "Can you give me an account on Black People Meet?" I was in tears.
Oh, that was good. I saw that.
So the internet is like persistently undefeated.
Never defeated.
Like, you are not going to beat the collective entity known as the internet.
Never defeated. Not by Jamiroquai guy, his fur hat. Not by sitting Bernie Sanders with his mittens.
Yo, I still hope Bernie Sanders is having the greatest week ever. And you know what? That was some presidential shit. Putting his own picture on a goddamn sweatshirt, selling it for $45, knowing that everybody was going to buy it, and then donating every single cent to the fucking food kitchen. That's how you actually.
But you know what that is, and this is what a lot of people sleep on. That's some Bernie Sanders shit. That is some
Bernie Sanders shit. That's the shit I like.
That's what I'm saying. That is 100% Bernie Sanders shit, and. As has been pointed out by many people, everybody wants to share Bernie all over the place. Should have been doing that during the election.
Absolutely. 100%.
Oh, you all want a dick ride now,
huh? And, we've discussed a number of times our concerns with how Bernie handled certain things in regards to the 2016 election cycle and the 2020 election cycle. But I'm still on record as saying that's my president. That's the guy that I would have chosen. Biden is not the guy I would have chosen. He is not far enough progressive for me. And it's a shame that what is considered progressive is really just like looking out for other people. I don't understand how we got so far. I mean, other than money, how we got so far away from helping the rest of us just exist.
Well, it's the money, and as proven by Der Fuhrer Trump, it's brainwashing, because everybody here is just like I talked about with keyword culture and all that shit. Everybody hears, socialism. First of all, what you think is socialism is not socialism. That's number one. Like, oh my God, we want to give everybody health care? That's socialism. That's not fucking socialism.
No, that's caring about your fellow man. That's making sure that the weakest among us have the best chance to survive.
Well, it's not even just that. There was also a meme that was flying around, and I wish I kept it. But there was a meme flying around from Bernie Sanders that basically said that he's just trying to get the most of his investment, meaning the tax dollars.
Makes
sense.
Like
you give all these taxes and you're going to complain about wanting something in return that's important? Like, what the fuck?
Because people have been told that it's bad.
Well, that's my point. That's my point, because everybody is so brainwashed with this bullshit that this is the thing now. Like, everybody turns on people like this because they want to do something like that, like healthcare, or like AOC wants to hold people accountable.
Yo, I was about to just say I wanted to shout out AOC in general, because she was out there instead of being at the inauguration like many other politicians were. She was down on the ground fighting the good fight. And yep. I can appreciate that 100%.
And by the way, they won that fight because she was, for those of you that don't know, she was, instead of going to the inauguration, and she caught shit from some people for this, and she handled it perfectly, because like CNN interviewed her and was like, well, what about a show of unity, blah, blah, blah. And she not only talked about the plight of the workers, but then she started getting into safety issues, which is a whole other story that we'll talk about. But instead of being at the inauguration, she was in Hunts Point in the Bronx at a picket line. She got coffee and hot chocolate for these people who were out in that brick-ass weather protesting because they wanted an extra $1 an hour and they wouldn't give them more than 35 cents. And this is a huge produce market, and all these deliveries and all this stuff, pandemic, all that shit is still happening. These people are still out there working, risking their health, and $1 an hour is too much while all these dudes are raking in money. So she was out there with them on the picket line the day of the inauguration, and they won because they ended up coming to an agreement that everybody's happy with. So it was a successful move.
And I commend her for being out there.
But people are trying to shame her, like, for not being at the inauguration. Like, yeah, there's an inauguration, but that doesn't mean that there's not still shit that needs to be done.
Right. Like,
and she wasn't shitting on Biden. Like,
by not going, she was handling the business that needed to be handled.
Yeah, I'll happily shit on Biden. I don't like Biden, never did. We've been vocal about it. But it wasn't anything to do with Biden. It was because that work needed to be done. And also, there were real safety issues. Ever since that nonsense that happened at the Capitol, there's been serious safety issues. Because I think we talked about this before. There was the one woman from Colorado who was sitting there tweeting out where Pelosi's at.
Right.
And she was the one, she was running ads talking about, I'm going to go to Congress with my gun and all this shit. And then they called her and were like, hey, just so you know, you can come into the building with the gun, but you can't go into the chamber with the gun.
Can't go in there.
It's against the law. So what happened? Some other dumb motherfucker in the House decided to walk in there strapped instead. And he had to know that happened. I mean, it was all over the news, and you would think it would be talked about in the House. But he tried to walk in with a gun. They stopped him. Then he did what's one of the worst possible things that you can do as a gun owner. And he got called out on this too. You know what he did?
What did he do?
He tried to hand it off to another representative from the state of New York who happened to be standing next to him. Also a Republican, by the way. Not a licensed gun owner. So, like, you're just going to go hand your gun to anybody?
No. That's not how it works.
And that dude was just like, yeah, no, I can't touch it. Because he knew the law. Like, this dumb bastard has a gun and doesn't know the fucking law. But that dude was like, yeah, no, hot potato.
Yeah, well, that would have been my response.
Right.
Not trying to get caught up on your dumb ass.
Reasonable. And also, you know the process and know the way things work. So AOC was all like, yeah, these dudes, there's already distrust from this Capitol shit because people, and I believe the Colorado girl was one of them. Some people were giving tours to people that it turned out were rolling up in there during the riots.
Yep, because now they knew where to go.
Yeah, and they got video of them saying, yeah, I've been in the next room. Just go in there and hop down to the next level, all the shit. I've been in there. Like,
no good. No good.
Yeah, that's a real bad look, and I'm sure more of that will come out as they continue to investigate this stuff.
Did you see that they've determined that they're going to let most of the people that they've detained go?
No.
Yeah, there was a report out that a lot of people have been either quietly let go or they're in the process of being let go.
Well,
now I will mention that this is a meme, but there is truth behind the meme. The meme was about Khalif Browder, who got detained for multiple years in New York City for not having bail money on a quote-unquote stolen backpack that they've never really even been able to prove. Right. And he was held indefinitely on this. No ability to get out. Meanwhile, a young white lady from the middle of Pennsylvania broke into Pelosi's office, stole her laptop, and was attempting to sell it to Russian operatives. And she's at home right now. No bail money even that I'm aware of was necessary to get her home. And there are 2 justice systems, if not damn near 3, in America at this point.
Well, I wasn't aware that they were actually letting people go because you probably would have heard my head explode from down in South Jersey where you are, or Central Jersey. Because there's no way that that's okay. None. None at all. All of these people that were involved in this thing should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law for one simple reason. And that one simple reason is if they're not prosecuted, people are going to look and be like, oh,
this again.
No big deal. We can do this again.
Yep.
And as we discussed before, if you think about it and you see all this crazy shit that happened under the direction of Trump, we got lucky. And the next time we will not be so lucky for multiple reasons. One, because there'll probably be a higher body count. But 2, because the next time won't be nearly as half-assed as this one.
Right. There will be much more organization, directives. There'll be someone calling the shots that's not a fucking moron.
Right.
Like you've already seen. It's like, so did you watch the? And I'm just going to equate this to fighting. Did you watch the fight with Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor? This
I only caught highlights of it.
Okay.
I did not watch the full fight.
If you have watched Conor McGregor fight at all in the past, and anyone he's struggled with,
right?
Poirier learned the arc and basically the blueprint to beat him by watching Nate Diaz, by watching Khabib. Mm-hmm. Because the way that Nate beat him was tiring him out and leg kicks. Right. He beat his upper leg up. Khabib just tired that motherfucker out to the point where it didn't really even matter what was going to happen. He was exhausted, and that was the reason why he lost.
Right.
Dustin employed the leg kick and allowed Conor to explode for basically the entire first round. So when he got to the second round, he was slower.
Right. He gets himself out.
Starting to tire out. He ain't fought in a year. And Dustin's been busy. Since their last fight in 2014 or 2013, Dustin's fought like something like 14 times, while Connor's only fought like 5.
Right.
So it's like, and I'm exaggerating those numbers, but it's you could see it, and you could see it play out in the fight, and it's the same situation. These people will have watched the arc of Trump and seen all the mistakes that he made, but also all the positive aspects that they can take from it and twist with someone with a better with an actual plan, right, and a better demeanor. So the next time we see somebody pop up that is going to be prolific in pulling in people, utilizing bad information, they're going to be really savvy at doing it.
Yeah, because we're real lucky in a way, although I don't think it's so much luck as much as it's by design, because I think in the end, the smarter guys have just been sitting back and waiting. But with Trump, yeah, the guy's an idiot in a lot of ways. He knows how to be an asshole, which we've discussed. But the problem is, next time, it's not going to be some dopey asshole. It's going to be some guy who's watching all this shit and taking notes and learning from the mistakes. And he's going to have soldiers. And the soldiers are much more likely to risk everything if they see that there's no consequences to anything.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're dealing with here, because all of these people, and it trickles down, because you know what? There's no responsibility for anything, because if this is probably the worst thing to happen to this country. I mean, I don't want to equate it to 9/11 in any way, but as far as not an actual strike, but an actual threat to our system of government, this was literally the invasion of a government building.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't get any worse than that, short of you blowing the damn thing up.
Right. Short of an explosion or an actual strike, this was an invasion by a bunch of misfits, basically.
Who call themselves patriots.
Yeah. But they weren't, you can't say that they were a fully organized group.
No,
although
not at all.
The twist of it that's been mentioned a lot is that as time goes by, a lot of these people were ex-military.
Or
a lot of these people were current or former law enforcement. But it's not like they were a unified team with like a full, yeah, like you saw the videos with the people with the bullhorns directing some people.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like they went in like a football team with plays drawn out.
Yeah, no, there were. But next time,
that's a real possibility, because the next time, it's been in the news for a million years about a lot of these guys that have their little, what's the word that I'm thinking of? Why am I spacing out on the word? Militias, or I feel like there was another word for it that I'm forgetting. But you had your militia types and these little groups of people that are up in the woods, like on some Unabomber shit.
Mm-hmm.
And it really wouldn't be that hard for them to organize at a higher level, because to a point they already did, but not to the level that we're talking.
So
like, you're literally talking about, like, next time they could form an army.
Easily. But that's the thing. It's the same thing as the fact that in 93 we had the World Trade Center bombed, and then 8 years later it was just decimated for 9/11. So if you take all the conspiracy theory out of 9/11 and you just bring it down to the fact that they already figured out that they meaning whoever was after it, that you could do pretty much anything you wanted in the direction of that building because nobody's really paying enough attention.
Right.
That you could sneak a bomb in there. So now you're going to just, fly some planes into it. And if you set some bombs in there as well, because nobody's been paying attention to it, when that plane gets there and lights that motherfucker on fire, then your bombs are going to go off, and you're going to take the whole goddamn building down. So, I want to take the conspiracy theory of it being an inside attack for 9/11. It was set, the stage was set in 93 when that original bombing went off. And it laid out the territory for the next time it happened.
But this is how most things work. Before we came on the air, we were talking about video games a little bit. I mean, I'm more of a game guy than you are, but it's the same basic idea. It's like if you are working on a level in a game, you play, you work out a pattern, you see things that work, don't work, and then you adjust your play accordingly.
Right. You got to do a test. You got to do a test run.
Right. It's all test runs, and it's all, it's easy to do when you have unlimited lives, like in a game. It's a lot harder to do in real life, but this is what happens all the time because this is the way scientists do things. This is the way other people do things. This is what terrorists do also. Just like you're talking about 93 was a test run. If you want to see what the security looks like, you work it out. And they did the same thing with other terrorist bombings and stuff like that. Because, hey, you see that they're not doing a certain thing, that's a vulnerability. Hackers do it
all the time.
Hackers do it. It exists in all different scenarios, whether it's video games or hacking or anything else. So all of this, somebody's looking at this as a test run. And
they're going to learn from it.
They're going to learn from it. And they're going to be smarter about it because, like I said, the first time was not very organized. If you add that extra knowledge plus another level of organization, because also now you'll have people that are motivated because, like, yeah, look what we did last time. Next time we can really make a difference.
I think that's part of the reason why you saw Washington, D.C. locked down big time last week during the inauguration, because they didn't want anybody basically within a mile radius of that Capitol building.
Oh, no. But I joked around at the very beginning of the show, but there's truth to it. Trump lost Twitter, and all of a sudden he just disappeared.
Oh, gone.
He disappeared. He had no other way to communicate his bullshit. And everything
Unless he's
dried
got
up.
Old school email template going out every day. Got a regular old email list.
But it's real funny too, because I thought about it and I thought to myself, we had talked about it a long time ago about the idea that if Trump disappears, Twitter might go out of fucking business. And I thought to myself, like, does Trump just buy Twitter? And then I realized no. And the reason he would not buy Twitter or create his own Twitter type of thing is the same reason why he's on it, which is that
he doesn't have any money.
Well, besides that, so he can always talk somebody into investing in it for him. But it's more the idea of what he always wanted to revoke, which was the whole liability thing. He doesn't want to be liable for...
He can just say what he wants and move on with his life.
He's always got another guy that he can push it on. He'll never own Twitter himself because then it's his.
Right.
This way, he's got that separation, so he can always say, oh, well, there's a problem. I didn't do it. You know, he doesn't have that accountability anymore. And that's why he won't do it. Because I thought about that the other day, and I thought to myself, well, would he buy Twitter? And then I was like, no, he wouldn't. Because then he'd be responsible for it. And he's happy to talk all of his shit as long as somebody else is responsible for it, not he himself.
All right. This is a good take. So, I hadn't thought about it that way. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I do agree.
And it's funny because he wanted to, you know, he wanted to revoke that whole thing with the accountability. And if he had done that when he wanted to do it, they would have shut him down right away because then they're responsible for his shit. And look at how it ended up.
Exactly.
And it just shows you how full of shit he is, because here he is trying to stop them from stopping him, and then look at how far they let him go.
Yeah. They let him go. I mean, further. He
bent their rules backwards in a million ways. They should have shut him down long ago. But
yeah, but it was making them money.
Oh, of course. Of course.
Follow the money. Who does it benefit?
Absolutely. And a lot of people have pointed that out. But flip side of it is, if he had revoked that thing, then they would have been at risk and they would have had to pull the plug on him.
Right. So, speaking of Trump.
Yes.
They're pushing forward with the impeachment, despite the Supreme Court not wanting to support it.
Well, of course.
Most of the Republican lawmakers don't want to support it. But then you got Mitt Romney, basically no, fuck you. We need to hold this motherfucker accountable. And I'm remiss to say I appreciate Mitt Romney, but he's right.
Absolutely.
You can't leave it open that this is an acceptable way to act as a president.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
You are then laying the groundwork that anyone else can come in and act a full ass for 4 years.
Right.
With no accountability, no kickback on it. Literally, just do what you want. There's no, there's nobody to tell you no. And by going through with this impeachment, impeach him a second time fully. That sends a message.
I agree with the accountability, but let me back you up a little bit, because I had issues with the impeachment early on. I felt like if they didn't pull the 25th Amendment, the whole thing was a waste of fucking time. Mm-hmm. And once again, as I stated at the beginning of the show, I'm wrong again. Because the truth is, that whole thing with the impeachment hanging over him, I think really affected his pardons. I think there were certain people that maybe he would have pardoned, but because of that impeachment hanging over him, he decided not to do it. Because if he had pardoned, say, any of these people from the Capitol, that impeachment would slam him for sure. It may slam him anyway, but that would be the biggest smoking gun that they would wave around, and it would completely sink any chance he had at a case.
See, for me, the only way the impeachment really works is if they follow through and look to bar him. And they'd have to vote on it, but bar him from running again.
Well, I think that's the target at this point, besides the obvious accountability. But just to go back for 1 second and say one more thing regarding pardons. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I mentioned this on the show. I know I mentioned it in private conversations with different people and on Facebook. I still think, as I've learned more about the pardon process, I still think that there are some mystery pardons out there.
Oh, yeah, that haven't come up yet because they haven't had to invoke them.
Well, the way it was explained to me between a couple of different sources that I read or listened to. There was definitely someone on CNN that mentioned this, and there was an article that I read also. He does not have to announce the pardons. That's not a requirement.
Right. He can just give the person the pardon, and then when they go into court, they get pulled in the court, they can say, hey, I've been pardoned. Here's my paperwork.
Well, that's the other part of it that I wasn't fully aware of, and I think a lot of people weren't aware of also, so I wanted to make a point of mentioning it on here, which is that you get a pardon, but it's not official until you whip it out in court. That is when you officially accept that pardon.
Right. Well, you could also submit the pardon to the court system. Right. But you don't have to do anything with it.
You can sit on it and not do anything with it. And I think possibly in the case of Giuliani, possibly in the case of his kids, possibly even in the case of himself, I think he probably wrote out a couple of pardons, and these people are keeping them in their back pocket, hoping for a quick impeachment trial so that after that's done, they can whip it out and it won't even matter anymore.
Right. It won't sink
because by then the trial will already be done. And they can't use it against them if the trial was already done.
Right.
So I firmly believe that there's a couple of those pardons floating out there. I can't say for sure if it's his kids or himself. The thing with pardoning himself is a whole other legal issue that nobody is really clear on, simply because nobody's ever tried to do it before.
Nobody's had to do it other than the only person that would have attempted was Nixon, but he couldn't. There was no way for him to make it to the end of his term.
Right. And Nixon lucked out because he got the pardon from Ford.
Yep.
But it's never been tried, so nobody really knows if it'll hold up. So that may be a whole other court scenario. But the bottom line, just to wrap up my tangent here about the pardons, is that I firmly believe that there's some secret pardons flying around, and we may not know about them for a couple of months. We may not know about them for a couple of years. I really don't know. It really depends on where things go. But I believe that there's a few that will come to light eventually. And it'll be a very interesting scenario when we find that out, depending on how other things have played out, as far as the impeachment and everything else. So we'll find out sooner or later.
One of the things that I'm seeing this past week from the few people that are still on my list that may have been Trump supporter-ish in general is, and maybe their followers, this sense of doom and gloom because Biden is in. And I actually read a statement that they feel like in 4 days he's done more to undermine the entire American public than Trump did in 4 years. Or that was basically the statement over the weekend. And I'm just like, I am not living in the same reality that you live within, and I will never be in that reality. I feel personally like, again, Biden is not my choice, but he hasn't done anything yet that would make me like mad. When he does something that makes me mad, I'm going to be vocal about it.
And it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. And I'm going to talk about it.
Of course.
But the stuff that he's put through hasn't been anything wild. I mean, even today or yesterday, I saw that he signed off on transgendered people being allowed to serve in the military. He cut that repeal from from Trump and put it right back in. And you know what? That's the kind of stuff I want to see.
Yeah, anybody who said that, I'd really like them to quantify that statement, because I don't see, and I'm not, we're not people that were like, oh yeah, Biden, it's going to be a new day, everything's going to be great. Like, we never saw it like that. But
I will tell you, I have felt a sense of relief since last Wednesday. Really, I have. Yeah. Like, even with the doom and gloom of COVID and just stuff around that, take that off the plate. Just the knowing that a verbal buffoon is not going to get us into a war or just make some irreparable gaffe on Twitter or some public source, knowing that the person that is the figurehead of our country can at least form a coherent statement, or at least read one off the damn teleprompter without going off the fucking books, like, and just not being unhinged in general has given me a sense of relief that I cannot explain beyond those words.
Well, let's put it in simple terms. It's nice to be able to breathe because there's now adults in the room.
Right.
Exactly. That's what it comes down to, because that whole thing was a shit show, and I'm sure more will be revealed over time.
Just how bad it was.
To a point, it's already being revealed, because I don't know if you've seen any of the recent discussions with Fauci.
I have not.
That's a guy that's just breathing easy now because there's adults in the room.
Right, and he can
because
actually
he was the only adult in the room, and he was on an island because that guy was just, everybody was against him. And meanwhile, it's not even like the guy is crazy. Like, the guy is about science, and yet he's completely outnumbered in the room.
Well, because nobody cares about science, because nobody cares about anything educational at this point.
Well, that and you got the bully, and everybody's scared of him.
I'm not even talking about that point. I'm just talking about the fact that 60%, 70% of our entire population are fucking morons.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a definite. I mentioned the bully thing because that's basically what he was talking about. He made it clear that that everybody was either an ass kisser or just scared to death.
Which is still ass kissing, in my opinion.
Right. He's the only one. Like, he felt like he was all by himself, and it certainly came off that way. And I feel bad for the guy, because the guy, he's not motivated by politics at all. He's worked under a couple of different administrations, both Democrat and Republican.
I mean, he's been the leading science guy for infectious diseases since the AIDS epidemic.
But also, let me mention the most important part. He's been pretty much right with everything he said.
Well, the thing that people want to like really just dig in on him about is that originally he said don't wear masks, that they won't hurt, they won't help. And he's come out and said, hey, I was wrong, wear the fucking mask. But everybody's like, nah, you said don't wear a mask first. You know, how can I trust you?
Right, because, things never adjust or change ever.
That's all science is small adjustments as you learn new information.
Wait, you mean the moon isn't made of cheese?
Well, I mean, it's made of the best Swiss cheese. I don't even like Swiss cheese, but yeah, I mean, people are fucking just so...
Yeah, we learn new things and we adjust. That's the basics of science. Well, listen, just like we were talking about...
anything.
Well, just like we were talking about with the capital thing. You go, you learn new things, you adjust.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're talking about science or whether you're talking about a fucking invasion.
Dude, it's just this. Even if I break it down to the stupid shit I do that people willfully pay me to do.
Right.
In the studio, if I put a mic up somewhere and that motherfucker doesn't sound good, adjust. Because the job is to make it sound good.
No, but wait, you have to put the microphone there.
I researched somewhere and they said to put it there, so I'm just going to put it there. Motherfucker don't sound good. Well, that's where they said to put it. We're just going to keep putting it there.
That's where it's got to go.
Yeah.
That's the difference between brains and no brains.
Well, how about this? Even simpler. Even more simple, because that's good English. If I cook a recipe and it sort of tastes good, I know what's in the recipe because I looked at the fucking list of things and I adjust to make it taste better the next time I make it.
No.
Very simple.
No.
No. Just do the recipe.
You can't do that. It's not allowed. You have to do it the same way every time.
A lot of times I'll look at a recipe and I won't even make, the first time I make a food, I won't even make it the way they say because I'm like, there's no way this tastes actually good. It just, there's no way. I'll make it my way. I'll just use yours as an idea, as a starting point. But that's a side note.
If you use your GPS and it's leading you to drive your car into water,
did you see that episode of The Office?
I never saw that episode of The Office, but I've seen it actually happen to people that,
really?
Of course, had the common sense to not do that.
Mm.
Like it's telling you to turn the wrong way down a one-way street. Don't do that.
Right.
But oh wait, the GPS says I have to do that.
I barely use my GPS like that. So when I'm in my car, I'll map out the directions, and I'm pretty good with especially major highways.
Yeah.
That if I just look at the map and you tell me where to go, I can just quickly memorize, okay, I need to go to here and here and here. I don't need this thing yelling at me for an hour while I'm driving on the fucking road. If I know where I'm going...
Yeah, if you know where you're going...
I might use it right at the end to get the fine detail of, the last three turns.
Right.
But otherwise, I ain't turning that thing on until I'm close. I'll check it right before I leave my house, and then I've got, 10 different total roads that it could be. And then I'll be there. So... we're breeding stupidity.
Well, by the way, isn't it funny that a lot of the same people that say that about Fauci and are they're incapable of change are the same ones that don't want to be told what to do?
Meanwhile, you can't tell me what to do.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you're just a fucking robot.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing what you're told to do all the time. All of a sudden now you want to be resistant. Just shut up, robot.
Well, it's like little kids. If you have little kids and you're telling them what to do constantly, and then they feel like they have control over this one thing that they don't want to do, whether it's eat food or take a bath or get dressed or whatever. That's the one thing that they will continue to rebel with you over because they feel like that's the only place they have any control in their life.
Well, that's why all of this is happening.
Exactly.
Because a bunch of these people are little fucking children.
Little kids.
Yep. It's all so ridiculous that all these things happen, that these people are just so resistant to so many things and are like, oh, well, Fauci was wrong and he told me to do this and that. But oh, well, Trump told me to invade the Capitol. Make up your fucking mind, robot.
I mean, he did tell you to do it, but you should have been smart enough to not fucking do it.
But that's the thing. You're not a fucking robot. You don't have to do what he said.
You should be able to look at it critically and go, that doesn't sound like a really good plan. I'm not going to do that. but you don't have any critical thinking at all.
I mean, if somebody tells you to go fuck yourself, what are you going to do?
Maybe you just go fuck yourself.
I mean, they told you to do it, so
you might as well go on and do it.
I got to do it. Come on. I mean,
did you see that Huckabee Sanders is running for a law for an
oh, Jesus Christ,
running for office out there? I think Colorado.
Why?
I don't know, but I'm just thinking about people who willfully helped this fucking orange goblin.
Oh my God!
Along the way, and her name popped into my head just a second ago.
See, but that's an interesting thing that
she quit.
I always wonder about, which is these people should be rejected, but these people should be on a blacklist and should never be able to work again, as far as I'm concerned. But yet,
no money for you.
But yet, she will probably have a lot of support.
Of course, she will.
Which just shows you how fucked up this whole society is right now. Like, we just accept these things because, much like what we said about adjusting, if we terminate bootlickers, if we shut them down and make it so that, if you're a complete bootlicker, like Ted Cruz.
God, it's the worst.
Like, if we shut you down completely, the next person will see that and be like, yeah, maybe bootlicking is not the best career option for me.
They can't be stopped from licking them boots, bro.
But
they're all going to do it.
That's what drives me crazy. The board. And that's why we're the minority, because we're the ones that are like, that shit is trash. But yet so many people openly accept it and embrace it. And I just can't, like, we're just not made for this place because we don't think that way.
Yeah.
And we're the minority now because so many people think that way, and I can't even process it. I don't get it. Like, I don't understand how people think that way, how these people blatantly do things that harm other people and don't care at all.
It happens every fucking day, and it's so painful to watch.
It's insane how they're so disconnected from common sense and don't care
at all.
Blatantly lie, blatantly mislead people in all different directions, costing them money, costing them their lives. And I don't understand how some of these people even sleep at night.
So, did you see the report that Fauci actually said that he was worried that Trump's disinfectant comment was going to actually make people do really foolish shit, like try and truly inject disinfectant into their bloodstreams?
I didn't see him say that, but I thought about it at the time, and it did.
And he was basically gagged from saying that. He wasn't,
of course he was,
allowed to come out against the man to basically like be like, come on. And it's a shame that people allowed him to continue on in such a dangerous manner for so long.
Absolutely. But that's what I was talking about with the bootlicking and all that stuff. So many people allowed this shit to go on. And I know we talked about it before, and I'll bring it up again. AOC was there and was talking about, we need to remember these people that helped support this man. And
get them the fuck out of here.
And all these people were clutching their pearls like, oh my God, I can't believe it's like McCarthyism all over again. And it's like, get the fuck out of here. Because now accountability, remembering that you licked the boots and enabled this fucking wannabe fascist, all of a sudden now you want to make it like, oh, that's so terrible. How could she say such a thing? Get the fuck out of here. Get lost. But so many people were clutching their pearls like, oh, it's so terrible. Like, no. What's wrong with holding somebody accountable?
Nothing at all.
But that's the problem. The mentality has gone so far in the other direction that we don't want to hold anybody accountable for anything. And it goes back to the impeachment thing, because at this point, the impeachment is only for accountability. And if it doesn't happen, then the next person will come along and use the system even more. And as we said, if there's no consequences, a lot more crazy shit's going to happen. And in the end, the whole thing is going to turn into a total mess. And you can't be surprised, because you know what? You let it get this far. It's ridiculous.
You know what they've let get too far?
What's that?
COVID in general.
Oh, well, that's a definite. And that's one of the things, like, I would say, in all honesty, Biden has done more about COVID
in less than a week
than Trump did in almost a year.
So, side note, on one of those people's posts, they were railing against Bezos for coming out and saying that he would be more than willing to offer help to the government for getting these vaccines out to people in a more efficient and faster manner, using his database teams, his shipping and expediting experience, etc. And they're like, oh, of course he comes out and says he'll do it now, but he wouldn't help the Trump administration, when it's on record that he offered the help and they turned it down.
Of course.
And then you have also on record Trump lambasting this man over and over and over again throughout the years. So why would he help him? But he still offered the help.
Right.
And it was turned down. So you can't, like, they're just finding their own rhetoric within the facts. They're twisting the facts to make it seem like Bezos was trying to not help the public, when it's on record saying that he would help the public.
Well, because
it's out there. In
the end, if you bring that up, people will just gloss past it and find ways to rewrite it to fit their own agenda, because that's what all these people are allowed to do now.
And let's be clear, I don't give a fuck about Jeff Bezos at all. That motherfucker hasn't put $1 in my pocket.
Right. And
I don't give a shit. And I occasionally might use Amazon to buy something, but I prefer to go to the store and buy it my damn self.
Right.
And then support him by buying through there. But regardless, he does have a wonderful infrastructure from a standpoint of deliveries, from a standpoint of databasing, and I can only imagine how much help his team could actually be to a woefully underdeveloped governmental action plan for getting these vaccines out to fight this virus. But what I want to put out there is that
because then I have to point something out.
There are 3 new variants that we know about, and all 3 of them are kind of not going to be covered by this fucking vaccine. And I hope that they've been continually adjusting along the way, and that we're not behind the 8 ball a whole nother year again.
We hope.
We hope.
But I would just like to point out regarding what you're talking about with this whole thing of Bezos is that there are some people that would be like, oh, well, why are we going to help? Why are we going to Jeff Bezos to help? Blah, 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 blah.
The motherfucker can help. That's why.
No, but here's the thing. The same people that have that attitude had no problem when Trump went up there with like the CEOs of all these healthcare companies that make a ton of fucking money too. Maybe not Amazon level money, but they ain't no fucking slouches, I could tell you that.
Or any other contract for that matter.
Right.
You want to look at our aerospace contracts. You want to look at our weapons contracts. They're all private companies too.
Oh, sure. But Trump was up there on stage with like the CEO of Walgreens and the CEO of CVS and a bunch of others when he was first announcing like the development for the vaccine and the testing and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He was up there with all those guys, and you didn't hear anybody crying about it.
Of course not.
But once you get Bezos involved, all of a sudden people are fucking crying. Everybody's very selective with their outrage.
Honestly, you put Bezos and Tesla, the guy who runs Tesla, and a few other people in a room, I guarantee you there's a way that they could fix so much of what's going on.
Oh, shit,
just from an infrastructure perspective. But nobody wants to talk about that. Like, I don't give a fuck about the guy from Tesla, and I don't give a fuck about the dude from Amazon or I don't give a shit about Bill Gates. Like, this is not a personal opinion. They have the money and the brain power that our government does not have to solve problems in creative ways. We are trying to solve problems with fire and stick, not fucking gas.
Well, the funny thing, too, is that you talk about these guys that run these huge companies and have tons of money, and people are like, oh, well, they don't give a fuck about us. They don't give a fuck about us. And I think to myself, but wait, you think the politicians give a fuck about you?
Yeah.
Like, what's the difference?
I guarantee you that the people who, like Jeff Bezos, gives a fuck about us because if we're all dead, there's nobody to fucking buy anything from him.
Right. Meanwhile, the politicians don't care because if
they're going to still be politicians.
Especially, I mean, let's put it out there, especially if they're Republicans, because Republicans have been spending a lot of time trying to get people to not vote. So it's a lot easier when there's less people.
Agreed.
Because at this point, in my opinion, controversial as it might be, and if you don't like it, I really don't care. So many Republicans backed Trump that, in my opinion, Republicans don't want a democracy anymore.
No, they're looking to
they were trying to overthrow this whole shit.
100%.
And I've said it before in private conversation. If you're a Republican, you should be removing yourself at this point. Because the Republican Party as it is now, if I were Republican, I'd be bailing out and saying those people are not my people. Because that party is so infested with bullshit.
I guarantee you there's going to be, if Trump pulls off his plan of starting his quote-unquote Patriot Party, there's going to be a purge of that Republican Party anyway.
Oh, and by the way, where do we hear that about Trump starting his own party?
Right here on the Upgrade Podcast.
Exactly.
Visit theupgradepodcast.net for all your listening needs.
Yes. And for future predictions.
Yeah.
But yeah, we talked about that. I said that the same way that I said it about AOC, that Trump should do the same thing because the logic is exactly the same. And then what? Maybe a week later, it was all over the news that guy is trying to start his own political party.
Yep.
Saw it coming. And it makes logical sense. But it also is great because then it makes it easier to just push them right off the fucking cliff.
I would love it if they all just were like, yeah, we're going to move over to this new party. And then all of a sudden, bye. Yep. Goodbye. It's like the old school AOL. Goodbye. Just totally ineffectual at this point. Like, you're in now, but in 2 years or 4 years, you're out. Goodbye.
But as I said, it'd be crazy if we went into an election in the next couple of years with 3 parties. Imagine if we went in there with 4.
It would change the entire game.
Be some shit. It would be some shit. And I'm all for it at this point. The Trump thing, to me, I think it makes it easier to kind of isolate them. So I'm all for that. And as far as my other idea about the progressives going in that direction too, I'm all for that. And it would just be funny that the two long-standing parties would be standing in the middle, just abandoned by a lot of the heavy hitters. And
honestly, at that point, if you took the what we're calling the far left, mm-hmm. which is really not that far fucking left, and the actual far right, and you took them and split them into their own parties, the Democrats and Republicans that were left would be almost unrecognizable from each other. They would be the same fucking party.
That is true, because they've
just met in the middle. Like, there's very little difference between the two.
Yeah.
The two, like, portions of that party that would be left. The people that are not progressive, or the people that are not, like, batshit crazy.
Yeah, you've got the extremes, basically. And if the extremes to either side leave, and I say extremes, but we know, as we've discussed, that the progressives are not really extreme.
No, it's not.
They're extreme for them, for that party.
Right.
But if you look at the grand scheme of things,
well, it's extreme. It's extreme if you compare it to where the rightmost people are, and that's why it feels extreme.
I mean, the thought of getting rid of corporate influence from government is extreme nowadays.
Well, it's sad, because you look at like someone like Elizabeth Warren, who people seem to see as being left-leaning, and I would argue she's still just a centrist.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh no, she's way too far left, and it's like, how far right have we gotten that someone like Elizabeth Warren is considered left? Because Bernie's further left than she is, but I would argue he's just the beginning of the left.
Oh yeah. Well, even the most left that we're talking about, like the progressives,
are not that fucking far.
They're not. But I've said that before, that for all these people that are like, oh, socialists, how terrible, and oh, the radical left and this, you motherfuckers wouldn't know left if it smacked you in the mouth. Yep. Like if people in this country saw true left, they'd be freaking out.
We've seen true right.
Oh yeah.
And that's why we're all like, yo, fuck that true right.
Right. But these guys that are the radical left, they're really not that far left at all.
Not even.
They're so
barely
they could
left.
Go so much further, and it would make people's heads spin. Because it's just everybody's just listening to the bullshit. Everybody wants to be spoon-fed. Everybody's just going by the keywords, and everybody's listening to the stuff that they're fed. Because the truth is, having corporate money no longer influencing government is a super radical extreme, because it's so radically different from what we're doing right now, because it's infested.
I mean, it's what we've been doing for 30 plus years at this point.
Yeah. Because it existed before that, but Reagan was the one that really
kicked it up. And it just has compoundingly gotten worse.
And by the way, I haven't seen this yet, but I'll run it by you, because maybe you have watched it and we haven't discussed it. The There's some recent documentary about Reagan. Have you seen it?
Didn't see it. I saw that it was out there. I intend to watch it, but I haven't watched it yet.
Glenn mentioned it to me and said it was good, but he also said that it's a must-watch just because they really show more of just how much of a racist he was.
There is no way you can tell me that motherfucker wasn't racist. I have no bone in my body that would ever be like, yo, I was a Reagan fan. Fuck that guy 100%. I'd fight his corpse if it walked in here right now. And not because it's a zombie, but just because he deserved it. Fuck that guy.
I had always heard about it, and I wasn't as aware of it at the time because I was young and didn't have I didn't have the same level of understanding that I do now.
Well, just imagine that he was a sort of a Western movie star.
Right.
Most of those guys, John Wayne is a fucking huge racist.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, to exist in that world, you kind of had, that was just part of the world that you were part of. So, anybody to believe that Reagan wasn't an out-and-out racist would be just ludicrous. Like, you want to tell me that Bill Clinton's a racist? I'd be like, yeah, he's like your low-level racist. Like, I don't see him in the same boat as a Trump or as the same boat as a Reagan. Like, I don't even see G.W. Bush in the same light. Like, when I look at him, he just seems like a guy that's just kind of really dumb, but kind of gets over on his affableness. And on top of that, his racism is like that. It's still very dangerous, but it's that latent shit. Like, I heard this and it's funny kind of guy. Not like he's not the guy that would be out on the street corner screaming it.
Yeah.
Whereas Reagan is a guy that I could see out on the street corner screaming it. Donald Trump took out a fucking ad in a newspaper to scream that these 5 black men were trouble when they had nothing to do with it, and it's proven. And he still, to this day, 30 years later, stands on that same statement he made because he's a fucking racist.
Right.
So, like, there are different levels to racism. And Reagan, kiss my whole ass. The whole thing, top to bottom.
Yeah, I mean, I never really cared for the guy anyway, but it's just so funny as you look at it, and we've outlined it on the show many times, just looking at Reagan and looking at the history of America, the serious decline of America as far as deregulation and things like that started with Reagan.
And it's just continued to get worse.
The corporate sellout existed on a much lower level, but Reagan really jump-started it.
He made it work for them.
Yeah.
He made it easy.
And he did it with the whole fantasy that a lot of people forget about, which was this whole idea that he started called trickle-down economics.
Yep, the trickle-down economics. Which we have proven over and over again does not fucking work.
Absolute horseshit.
There is no such thing as a trickle-down.
Trickle-down economics is the idea that if you cut the taxes on businesses, it'll stimulate business, and in turn, that money will trickle down to the lower part, to the regular people.
Right. So let's say Bezos making bajillions of dollars.
Right.
It should trickle down to either lower prices, because then he can afford to spend a little bit more to get a little bit more in, or it should at least trickle down to the people who work for him that they should technically get paid more, but they don't.
Right. The truth is, this whole idea of trickle-down economics doesn't work, and that's why you have these fucking super billionaires, this top 1%, because that's, all this money is sitting up there because instead of it trickling down, it never trickled down. They just hold on to all of it and hoard the fucking thing, like Len said. So that whole idea that Reagan had turned out to be bullshit. But because of all that deregulation that started under Reagan and continued, that's why all of these corporations now are huge and they have so much influence in government. Because one of the biggest things I've always said, I agree with the whole progressive movement about, is the idea of removing money from government. And if you want to talk about progressive candidates, we talked about this recently, the idea that they're never going to give some of these progressive candidates the ball. It's because
they can't.
It's going to fuck with their money.
Exactly why I'm saying they can't.
Yeah.
Because if you start fucking with corporations' money, they're going to pull out and not support you. And if they're not supporting you, that means you're not getting paid. And if you're not getting paid, you're upset. But then on top of that, when it comes down to voting the next time, they're going to vote for somebody that will work for them to make sure that they are getting the money they want. Because the precedent was set so long ago that you physically have to break the system at this point to make it change. So, like, for our listeners to just think about trickle-down economics, imagine you have a stack of glasses, and technically, if you keep pouring water into the top glass, it should trickle down to all the glasses. And you've probably all seen this at like weddings or whatever, and they got the champagne and they pour it in the top and it goes into all the fucking cups, and you come by and you pick your cup up. Well, what happens is they just make bigger and bigger cups at the top and nothing comes down.
Nope.
Or they just siphon it off to some offshore account with, like as if you were stealing gas out of somebody else's car.
Right.
It's basically the same damn thing. You will never get it. And the only thing you're going to get is shit on.
Let me tell you guys a little secret that you probably don't realize, because it all ties into all of this. The same way that I'm talking about what they say is far left is not really left, and far right is a whole other story. But how these parties claim to be left, but they're really center. By that same token, what we have as capitalism isn't really capitalism.
It is not.
It's run by a handful of people at the top, and this whole idea of if you work hard, you'll get rewarded. The way a lot of us, at least, at our age, were taught when we were kids, that if you work hard, you'll be rewarded. And there are some people that start their own business and doesn't go anywhere. That's not how any of this works at all.
None.
So it's not.
I mean, what you got to think about it is, let's just say you have a fire hose. That fire hose is connected to 50 spigots, and 50 spigots are connected to 50 more, not even spigots, but just like, let's call it little tiny balloons. The amount of time that it would take for those balloons to fill up is insurmountable versus how fast the rest of the well fills up.
Mm-hmm.
So that trickle down is not trickling down. It will never trickle down to you.
No. And And like I said, what everybody refers to as capitalism isn't really capitalism because it's all controlled. It's all run a certain way so that it's very limited in who benefits from it. I've seen a million mom and pop businesses close up long before COVID because they're swallowed up by real estate people who want to hike up the rents so that Chipotle will move in. When I used to work downtown by the South Street Seaport, I watched mom and pop businesses close like crazy.
Well, the way you got to think about capitalism is, let's say you have an idea, you invent something. You might get paid for the invention, but the person who's able to take it to market and run with it is the person that's going to actually get paid. And unless you're both of them, you're screwed. And that's part of capitalism, is who can make the most out of an opportunity.
Yeah, much more likely that you invent something and then you end up on Shark Tank.
Yep. And then somebody sees you on Shark Tank and takes your idea and runs with it, and you're screwed.
Right. Or one of these people on Shark Tank makes you an offer and you take the offer, so like you cashed out on your invention, but it's no longer your invention.
Yep, you lost it. And then when it
you
blows
don't
up,
own it anymore.
When it blows up, you're back at the bottom. Sure, you got your pittance for coming up with the idea, but you're not the one that's actually benefiting.
Right. But this is the lesson, just like what I said before. You think it's capitalism, it's not capitalism.
Right.
If it was true capitalism, there would be no influence in the government.
I would argue that some of the... So we all know what... Listeners, we all know what OnlyFans and Patreon, etc. is. And this push to regulate sex work in general, but specifically online sex work, I'm going to argue is not just government trying to intervene in these women or even men's lives and tell them how to live. I believe that it has to do more with the capital interests of all of the porn warehouses that are losing money because people are doing their own thing and making their own money on their own. They don't need the outlets that used to exist. Right. So we're talking there are a whole bunch of porn companies out there. I don't need to run them down, but they're all together and they're all losing money because women and, well, just people, performers of all kinds, have taken to these other methods to make money without having to deal with the man.
Right.
And now all of a sudden, when capitalism comes home to roost, the people who were originally making money aren't making the money, and now they're mad. So they're going to make it so that you have to go back to them. Or at least they're going to attempt to.
Well, look at YouTube.
Oh, YouTube ruined so much stuff.
YouTube now puts ads on everything.
Yeah, but they also started the revolution of people not tuning in to regular TV.
Right.
But there are ads on everything because...
And you don't necessarily make any money off those ads anymore. No. It used to be that you could put the ads on and you would make a little something off of it. But now they've changed their stuff over time, so you can't monetize everything unless you have a certain number of subscribers.
And a certain number of views. And as Sonny said, a certain amount of time on view. So, like, it's not just clicks anymore. It's about how long did they stay.
Right.
So if your video is 5 minutes long, they need to stay at least 4 minutes of that 5 minutes for you to get your pittance. Whereas before, it was just until the ad played.
Mm-hmm.
So there are new metrics constantly. They constantly are moving the fucking goalpost.
Yeah, because they can. Because there's no regulation of it whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
None. So they can do what they want. And that's part of what we're talking about. All that deregulation started in the Reagan years for the most part. And it goes for companies like that. But that's all new media stuff that didn't exist back then.
And they're scrambling.
Financial companies, the deregulation has changed everything for them. Once upon a time, if you had like a retail bank that you could walk into, that had to be kept separate from an investment bank.
Yep.
Those were separate companies with no relation whatsoever, no integration. They lifted the regulations, so now you have these super mega financial companies.
Well, yeah, I used to work for one. So I worked for Merrill Lynch Investment Management, and that was part of Bank of America.
Right.
They owned it. So there was a time right before I started working there, they were separate entities, and but they combined them after some deregulation measures went through, and now, basically, if you have a MLIM account, it's a Bank of America account.
Right.
It's the same thing. Like when I got my mortgage on my house, it was a Bank of America mortgage. They sold my mortgage to another underwriter, but it's still a Bank of America mortgage.
Right.
And I still pay them. I still pay Bank of America, but somebody else is the parent company, but Bank of America still owns it.
Right.
So I got a letter in the mail, blah blah blah, that owns your thing, but your payment location won't change. How does that work?
Which is crazy.
How does that work?
But if you remember when the economy tanked and they had to bail out the banks, they said they're too big to fail, and this is how they got to be too big to fail. Because if everything wasn't deregulated by Reagan and afterwards, they wouldn't be too big to fail.
Right.
That's the trick. So that's where a lot of the problems have come from. I mean, that's specifically in the financial industry. But if you look at a lot of other companies, a lot of other corporations, and the way they have influence with lobbyists and all this other stuff, this is all stemming from that early deregulation from the Reagan years. And that whole idea of trickle down, which obviously was a bunch of shit.
I mean, they knew it was a bunch of shit when they proposed it. They had to know.
I would assume they had to know somewhat. I'm sure they didn't have the foresight to see just how good it would work out. And I'm sure it worked out way better than they ever expected it to be for them. But again, another subject that I've talked about a million times in my personal life and on this show, when this country started, they were never talking about politicians being career politicians.
Yeah, and not permanent members.
They were going to do their couple of years and then go back to regular life. So career politicians, then you find a way for these career politicians to continue to have more and more influence by courting the people who have money. Let the corporations grow. Let the corporations throw more money to help these career politicians, and the whole system is shot. That's why I say it's not capitalism anymore, because it's all based on those transactions. The transactions that we make as little people don't really matter to them. It's not that important.
It doesn't. It's not.
It's really doesn't matter to them in the grand scheme of things, because what matters is that they're getting that money, and using that money to further their own causes.
I mean, technically, if you really want to dig into how money works around here and how we are set up, and you want to go on Google, they've moved away from even calling America a capitalist country. We're a mixed economy at this point. We do both capitalism, socialism, and just full-on free market at this point, which is a fucking mess.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not even the good socialism necessarily.
No. I mean, because there are certain things that we do that are great. So, when we're talking about socializing around our roads, I mean, they could be better, but we do have a good overall start for infrastructure. You want to talk about locales, trash, libraries, police, fire departments, etc. Things that we all pay into as a socialist measure. The mail system before Trump fucked it up. You want to talk about our U.S. armed forces, etc. All of it, socialism. We do it well when we actually put our minds to it.
Right. Well, my point with it not being the good socialism is that in reality, the socialism that we're talking about really doesn't benefit us that much. Like with certain things, it might.
I mean, all the things that I mentioned, I think, benefit us, and we use them every day.
Right. But when it comes to roads and stuff like that, we definitely had this conversation before about the idea of the fire department. Luckily, we've never had to use them, but obviously it's good. It's important that they're there if you need them. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to our everyday, daily lives, there is a lot more that we could get out of it, but we don't.
People aren't willing to go that far.
Well, but that's the thing. We've been brainwashed as a culture.
We've been, not me and you, but we as a whole have been scared off of using it.
Right, because they've made these things so negative. Like, it just boggles my mind how we could be so angry about the idea of everybody having health care. Like, why is that so terrible?
I don't know.
Nobody's ever given me a good answer. And I just don't understand.
I can't give you an answer.
Like, why is that so bad? Like, what is so awful about it that you are so angry about the idea of it? I don't get it.
Well, I think what it comes down to is the same thing that you mentioned earlier, is the brainwashing.
Right.
They're worried. Like, you talk to people about anything medical, whether it's doctor's visits or prescription drugs or whatever, and they're concerned about people taking advantage of the system, or that, things just the work, not the work, but like a doctor's work wouldn't be as good if he had to see so many more patients because of this, that, and the other thing, and people wouldn't make any money, and it all comes down to money. Like, everybody is scared that the quote unquote money wouldn't be there, and the prestige of being a doctor wouldn't be so prestigious because they look at a doctor as somebody that's taking in so much money, so they must be so good. Like, there are so many different little angles to this, and it's all embedded in the idea that it's a system that should only be available to the rich. And it was only really available to the rich for a long time.
Right. Meanwhile, the ones that are fighting it so hard
don't have any fucking money in the goddamn first place.
Exactly. But it's so insane that everybody has been worked into this madness about this thing that it doesn't even add up anymore. It doesn't make any sense.
If you told me that, hey, you have guaranteed health care coverage, the same level as the guy who happens to be houseless, who lives on a street corner because that's just where the motherfucker lives, I'd be like, okay, we're all getting the same care, fine. And even if you said, and you can purchase more care if you'd like to.
Right.
Fine. You leave it up to me, but everyone should have a baseline amount of healthcare guaranteed to them by the system.
Yeah.
And not some like bullshit care. Like, you need a doctor, you're sick, go see the fucking doctor.
And by the way, it's not like, and this goes back to what I said before about Bernie, it's not like we're asking for some crazy shit. Like, this is what we supposedly pay taxes for.
Right. What, like
that's supposed to be part of why we pay taxes.
Is to have the things that we need.
Right. And our tax money goes to all kinds of other shit that we don't need.
And we don't even see. And when I say we don't see it, it's all buried in mountains of paperwork that no one ever reads. Nobody reads these things. Like, there's 6 people in America that actually read the whole damn thing.
Yeah.
So our money is going in places that it would make your head spin if you knew where you, like, if they gave you a personal breakdown of where every single one of your tax dollars went to, even if it was, 2 pennies went here and 3 pennies went there, you'd still be mad because you're like, I didn't want to pay for that. Give me my fucking money back.
Exactly.
If you told me that my money was going to make sure that my next door neighbor was getting good health care when he needed it, I'd be perfectly fine with that.
But a lot of people would not be. And that's what boggles my mind.
What is wrong with those people? I don't understand.
I think the root of the problem is that somehow, and this goes back to Trump and his bullshit build a wall scheme, I think it's the idea that...
Side note, wall never got built.
Yeah, I know that will shock many people, but for all that talk and all that shit, they only built pieces of that wall and they're falling apart.
Yeah, half of the wall that was built is falling down.
But I think one of the things when it comes to brainwashing, one of the biggest things is that we've built up this idea that if we're going to give something to somebody, like a certain class, that to do that we have to take away from other people.
And that's not how it has to work.
Which is the division bullshit. And that's why you have people, they're like, yeah, build a wall, go back to where you came from, all this other shit. Because all of a sudden these people are a threat. These Mexicans that are crossing over the border are suddenly a threat. They're going to take our jobs. Like you were going to work those fucking jobs anyway.
They weren't going to work those fucking jobs. No.
That's number one. Number two, the whole thing was blown way out of proportion. But all it takes is, the crazy conspiracy theories start with a twisting of the truth. I was explaining this to somebody today, actually, because you look at shit like QAnon, and it starts with like a little bit of truth that's twisted around.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just twist it further, and it's like that little bit of truth is the hook that gets the fish. And then they're like, you got them. You got them on the line, and then they'll go with you all the way. Which is ridiculous, but
absolutely.
That's how these things start. They start with a little bit of truth, and it gets twisted around to serve a certain narrative. And there was an article that a friend of mine posted that I read that was actually by a guy who is a video game designer.
Okay.
And he talked about QAnon simply because it's something that they build into their games. And it's the idea of like things, a bunch of coincidental things are actually pointing you in a direction.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is, in reality, where we live every day, that's not the case. They're coincidences, but in a game, a lot of times it's a way to point you somewhere. So people are looking for this meaning, and this meaning just isn't there, but they're so sure that they see it.
Right, and they're just grasping.
And I just pulled up the article. The article, by the way, is on thestreet.com, and it's called A Game Designer's Analysis of QAnon. And obviously, I'm not going to read the whole article here, but it's the idea that people are searching for a meaning to something, and in a game, of course, because that's what happens. But we're not in a game. It's real, and sometimes
yeah, but these people have broken from fucking reality.
Right, but that's the whole problem.
And they don't realize that they're just playing a game. They don't even know any longer. So, you know, we've talked about QAnon a few times in the past couple months, let's just say.
Yeah.
And the virtual disconnect that these people have had since A, Trump has gone offline for various reasons, and B, because he didn't follow through and do things that they thought he should do as he was leaving the office. Now they've literally turned against the man in most cases because they feel like he frauded them. And I'm like, if you didn't realize you were being frauded the whole time, you're just extremely stupid.
Yeah. Which, in a lot of cases, most cases, they are.
It's just insane to me.
I'm not going to explain QAnon.
No,
but
if
you're not, well, no, my brain can't take it. I mean, we talked about it recently, having to explain it to my girlfriend because she was not, she didn't, like, she had heard bits and pieces about it but didn't understand it.
Uh-huh.
And just having to explain it to her, like, my brain hurt for days. The whole thing is so ridiculous. And the fact that anybody buys any of this complete and total horse shit just proves that we have a very serious mental illness problem in this country. And it's a hopeless cause. Like, the fact that people can even buy that shit, like, I can understand you sending money to a Nigerian prince more than I can understand you going in on this shit. Okay? Let's just be real and put it out there.
Let's be real. The people that are believing in QAnon are also probably the Venn diagram of them and the people who send money to Nigerian princes it's probably just one singular circle.
Yeah. They're the same ones that, you know, contributed to Trump when he was trying to investigate voter fraud. But, I mean, really, the whole thing is just insane. I'm not going to explain it again, but look into it. There's plenty of information on Wikipedia and in other places. And if you can look at that stuff and you can seriously come at me and tell me that there's logic to that, like, there's just Like,
I don't even want to hear it. I honestly don't even want to hear it because they're not going to come out with anything that is believable in any kind of way.
I can't. If you come away like that, I can't fuck with you. Period.
I mean,
I can't, because that shit is out there.
I like to think that I'm open to hearing new things and taking in a new angle and trying to understand where things are coming from. Yeah. But that's a bridge too far for me, and you can kiss my whole ass with it, because you are off the ranch. You're not even working with any amount of logic, and I don't want to hear it.
No, it's so far removed from reality that if that's how you roll, good for you. Just keep rolling.
Yeah, roll right off the fucking edge of the cliff. Just keep going.
Roll right off the edge of the world, because you're probably down with that flat Earth shit too.
Yeah.
But I can't do it, man. I just can't get with it. It's so it really, to me, illustrates serious mental health issues in this country. I can't do it.
Me either. And I won't do it.
No. You're so far removed from reality that I really don't know what's going to help you. And yet, here we are. These people now feel abandoned by Trump, which, you're still not coming to terms with the fact that you got hustled. But also,
just for a minute, just put yourself in their shoes, just for a minute. Just take a second. Do you believe? Because at some point in my mind, I thought about it from this angle, that they know they got hustled and they're just embarrassed. So instead, they're just deflecting, because they don't want to admit out loud, I was wrong.
Yeah, but at some point you're just gonna have to give up the ghost, man.
Some of these people ain't gonna.
Well, then I got nothing for you, because everybody at some point has to admit to their mistakes, and you can be an adult and say, listen, I went the wrong way, I made a big mistake, and cop to it and accept it and move on. Or you could dig your feet in and continue and go all out, which is what a lot of Trump people did. And it's just like, listen, I gotta let you go, bro. Like, I can't sink on this ship with you.
Yeah,
it's too much.
Are you the one that sent me the thing that said that somebody thinks that March 4th he's coming back to office?
Yes. Did you fully read that article?
I only read probably the first 2 paragraphs. I didn't read the whole thing.
Let me throw some shit at you, okay?
Okay.
And I'm gonna pull up the article just to be 100%.
I feel you.
Because the shit in this article is wild. Like, I sent it to you, and I had read probably half of it, but then I finished it.
And you just were like, what is even going on?
Okay, so QAnon has basically started to get down with another conspiracy type of movement, which is the sovereign citizen movement. Are you familiar with it?
No, I'm unfamiliar with the sovereign citizen movement, but I'm sure that I'm about to have my mind blown.
I don't know how far back the sovereign citizen movement goes, but there was an incident back in, when was this? There was an incident back in 2010, so it goes at least that far.
Okay.
Where 2 people who were followers of this movement murdered 2 police officers in Arkansas.
Okay.
So the sovereign citizen movement, which a lot of the QAnon people have now started to jump onto this train, which is inevitably going to crash into a wall.
Yeah, I mean,
the sovereign citizen movement believes that a law enacted in 1871 secretly turned the United States into a corporation and did away with the American government of the founding fathers. So now,
listeners, you can't see me shaking my head, but I'm shaking my head.
This is an article on Vice, and the title of the article is QAnon thinks Trump will become president again on March 4th. The first sentence in the article I will read and then I will explain. Donald Trump will be sworn in as the 19th president of the United States on March 4th, 2021. And once again, listeners, I just watched as Len's eyes bugged out of his head a couple of centimeters. So, to explain this is emerging, like I said, of QAnon with the sovereign citizen movement. Because now a lot of these QAnon people are upset because their savior didn't come through for them. The storm didn't happen.
The storm is coming.
They believe that Donald Trump was going to be the savior. Their savior didn't come through for them. He's disappeared into his little Florida compound. So now a lot of the QAnon people have started to jump on the sovereign citizen movement. Now, why is Donald Trump the 19th president of the United States in this sentence?
I don't even understand
that. And why is the inauguration on March 4th? First of all, the inauguration being March 4th, in 1933, inaugurations were moved from March 4th to January 20th to shorten the lame duck period for an outgoing president. Now, because they think that America got sold in 1871, everything after 1871 doesn't count.
Okay.
Which is why that would move it back to March 4th, and also why he's the 19th president.
Ignoring everything else.
Because everybody afterwards doesn't count. This is a thing.
So while you were talking, I was actually just looking up this sovereign citizen movement, and it actually goes all the way back to 1971.
Wow.
So what it comes down to is it was a posse comitatus movement as a teaching from a Christian identity minister called William P. Gale. And it really has to do with the tax protester movement. And it's like continued to morph and morph and morph. They got involved with the 1980 farm crisis. They have worked alongside people looking at like the Uniform Commercial Code, so the UCC, or like they've just been tied into a whole bunch of stuff. But their beliefs are tied into Moorish science temples of America, which is just yeah, exactly.
I'm shaking my head because in the end, these things always come back to some weird cult religious type of bullshit.
But the worst part is, you're talking about the Moorish Temple of America, but they also issue pretty much anyone that's African American because that doesn't count.
Oh, wait, so it's tied in with racism too?
Yeah. Can you imagine?
I never would have guessed.
You wouldn't have guessed that?
No.
And they're also against United Nations of Indigenous People.
I'm shocked.
Can you believe that? So, yeah, I mean, we're talking about a really, really smart group of people here.
I never would have guessed.
Very forward thinking.
Oh, sure. Of course. Why am I not remotely surprised?
I don't know. Well, I know.
Well,
but I just don't understand how we got here. I don't know.
So let's see. Just to do a little math here. So they believe that that the U.S. became a corporation in 1871. Now, what year did slavery end?
Right around that time.
1865. What a coincidence.
Yeah. It's just.
God. I never would have guessed that it's tied in with racism and religion.
You just couldn't imagine it.
I never would have guessed.
Nothing in our country is tied in with these things. So why would it be now?
So, let me ask you this. Once March 4th comes, and all these people are let down again...
Then what?
What's their next move? Do they just go Scientology, or which way do they go?
I don't know. I think they'll try and figure out what day.
Are they going all in on Xenu or what?
Well, I think they're going to figure out what day Easter is, and then he'll be inaugurated on the return of Christ.
I thought he was the return of Christ.
Well, maybe that will be the return.
So in the end, these people are let down, and they just keep jumping from island to island, waiting for that island to get washed over. Isn't it amazing?
These people need a fucking life.
Like these people are so far removed from reality. They're so far removed from reality that they can't come back.
Yeah, there's no.
So they just keep looking for new places to go because mainland reality is just too far away. They can't make that swim.
I won't make the full reference, but it's just like in Tropic Thunder. You just never go full.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is no coming back, and they've already gotten there.
Oh yeah, oh God, my brain hurts.
I mean, you're hurting my brain. I read some of that, but I didn't. I knew that I didn't want to get too deep in the mud, and then you just dragged me in, quicksanded me.
Anything with QAnon
is just a fucking...
is guaranteed brain pain. Guaranteed.
Yeah. Just...
There's no way around it. It's guaranteed. 100% brain pain. Yeah. I have to share these things with you because if I have to suffer with this nonsense...
then you need me to suffer too.
Then you need to join me. As my good friend, you need to suffer with me because
I don't know if we're friends anymore. I think
we're smart.
I think you ruined it.
We're smart, and we have to suffer through all of this stupidity. It's terrible.
I don't think I can talk anymore for the day. I think I'm done because you just broke my brain. You ruined me.
Blame them. Now, by the way, just to point this out, and then we'll change subjects because my head's going to explode like scanners if I keep on this for much longer. As crazy as all this shit sounds, there are people in high levels of the government, there are people in Congress that are down with all this shit. They're down with QAnon. They're probably down with the sovereign citizen shit.
Okay. Let me be very explicit. The people that are in there were put in there by people on the ground like us.
Yeah, they were voted in.
They were voted in by someone.
They didn't just get appointed. Somebody said, I like this person and I want to vote for them.
Who are these people? Where are they? Please remove their voting privileges because they do not deserve them any longer. That is where I'm going with this whole statement. These people they are not of sound mind and body and should not have a vote left because they cannot be trusted if they're voting this trash into these positions of power. Now, granted, I don't really fuck with politicians as a whole. I think that all of them are pretty slimy, but this is the mega ooze. This is the shit that will turn a regular turtle into a fucking Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle with just like some real off-the-wall shit is coming out of these people's mouths.
You ever see Tank Girl? This is how you get mutant kangaroos.
Yeah, I mean, again, I've said it earlier on many episodes. Do you want ants? Because this is how you get ants.
And by the way, just to really seal this deal, at least in one case that I know of, probably a few, if I look hard enough, because at this point I don't want to. In at least one case, when it comes to these people in Congress, they really like their guns too.
Yeah.
So you're talking about somebody that thinks this way that also really enjoys firearms, which is a little concerning. I mean, I'm not a gun guy, and that's fine. I have friends who are gun people, and that's fine. I'm not one of these nobody should have a gun people, but I think there's a limit, and I think if you're that far removed from reality,
you don't deserve the gun.
I kind of wonder if you're responsible with that firearm.
And you know they're not.
You know
they're not. You know they're not.
Yeah.
So, just looking at this, let's remove their voter rights. Let's remove their rights to assemble. Let's just get rid of all their rights because they're clearly not thinking right. I'm done with them.
Now, I want to change the subject because, like I said, my head's going to go scanners in a minute if I don't. But unfortunately, the other subject that I was thinking of is probably going to get us equally angry, which is this nonsense in Tacoma with the cop. I assume you're up to speed on this thing.
I watched the video. I read the information. I obviously wasn't in Tacoma, so I wasn't there on the scene. But what the fuck? This comes down to the same thing we've been talking about for almost an entire year at this point. The cops just don't give a fuck about us. And they don't even care if they get caught doing wild shit because they know that somebody will get them out of it.
Yep. This cop is on video running people over with his car, marked police car. Can't even say it was an unmarked car or whatever. Big marked police car on video, multiple angles. And he's been reassigned. He hasn't been fired. He hasn't been suspended. He hasn't been anything. No charges.
Nothing.
Group of protesters.
Just drove through them. He says that he was surrounded.
Doesn't look like he's surrounded on video. Either way, he's in a big fat SUV. So It doesn't. No.
And for me, this just goes to show the difference in how things are handled, depending upon the reasoning in which you're assembling. It doesn't even matter whether you're white or black or whatever. If you are attempting to get minorities an equal share, you are seen as a threat. It does not matter what color you are. If you are fighting for the minority, this is how you will be treated. Whereas if you think that you're going to fight for your patriotic rights and insurrect the Capitol, you'll get a hero's welcome and be shown around the place. And, you know, maybe a few of you might get roughed up a little bit, but it certainly won't be an officer running you over with his car. And you'd have to go really fucking far to get shot. Whereas any one of these people that are surrounding this car at any point could have easily been shot.
Yep.
Multiples of them would have been shot. And the police would have just said, well, we were scared. They deserved it, basically. And it comes down to the same thing I said earlier. There are 2, if not 3, layers of reality around the justice system in America.
It's completely ridiculous. And the fact that this guy didn't even lose a day's pay for this.
Just doing whatever he does as a cop. No change, just maybe a change in location.
Now, we would be remiss if we didn't point out, again, that it would probably be very different if this was a Stop the Steal protest.
It would have never come to this.
Because that's when the cops take selfies and open gates for people.
They would have been handing out donuts and coffee.
Yep.
Especially in a place like Seattle. Well, Tacoma.
Yeah. It's funny how that works.
If you're brown, stay home. That's basically what they're saying. Or if you're fighting for the brown, stay home. Don't come out here because we're going to run you over, we're going to shoot you, we will kill you, we will maim you, whatever.
Well, that's one of the ironies of the whole Capitol thing, because the Capitol thing, a lot of those same people were the ones that were like, oh, well, they should have just complied.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're being violent, this and that. Why are they out there violently protesting when all of a sudden here you are doing
the same
thing? The
thing.
exact same thing.
If not worse.
Worse.
So I did
in a lot of cases.
I did see, and I commented on someone's post because it was actually a picture of a black guy that was involved in the Capitol insurgency. But unlike a lot of the people that were also with him or around him, etc., he's been picked up and not released while others have already been released. And I said, in true troll fashion, that's what you get. You knew your ass shouldn't have goddamn been there. You're too black to be doing this shit. Stay home.
You're not going to get a pass like these other guys.
Not at all.
Well, he fucked around and found out.
And he's going to continue to find out. Because he will be the one that they will try to make a fucking example out of.
Yeah.
That's the word I'm looking for.
The irony of that, it's so ridiculous. And I'm laughing because I'm thinking of Jeff when he was like, yeah, blacks for Trump.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh, well, he's Republican, fuck him.
Yeah.
But
fucking ridiculous.
I mean, I don't understand anybody being down for that cause. I can't even imagine being black and down for that cause, because that whole system is so blatantly racist, and people still try to make excuses for it. But as we've outlined, Central Park 5, Trump was racist long before he got anywhere near DC. You could walk away, miss me with that whole Trump isn't racist shit.
He's racist. It is,
because you haven't been paying attention.
It is on record, and if you don't believe the record, that's on you.
Yeah, it's all right there. Even recently, the Central Park 5 shit back then with the full page ad and all that shit, and even recently he was like, oh, well, they must have been guilty of something.
They were out there. They're guilty.
Yeah, they were guilty of something.
Fuck you, Trump.
Did he ever say that about a couple of white kids out at the park?
Nope.
After dark? I highly doubt it.
Absolutely not.
So, miss me with that bullshit.
It's just so painful.
Yeah, but, oh, well, Biden's president. Everything's good now.
We all know that ain't nothing different. The only difference is that we don't have someone out there promoting it. Yeah. He's not going to be out there stopping it. And anybody who thinks he's going to be out there stopping it is a fucking moron. But at least he's not out there supporting it.
Right.
Verbally.
He's not out there blatantly trying to start a race war.
I don't want to get into the ins and outs of Kamala and her horrible track record, because that's a whole can of worms that would take way too far to unravel. But if people seem to think that Joe and Kamala are these really left-leaning people who are going to change the way things go, and it's the most infuriating thing that I have to hear, because I know for a goddamn fact that neither of them are cut from that cloth.
Right.
You want to come at me about someone like AOC trying to change the game? Hell, you want to come at me with someone like Elizabeth Warren trying to change the game? I would say, yeah, you're probably right. But you can miss me with that on fucking Joe Biden, because he is long since been on record as making some really horrible, horrible choices. And hopefully he's going to be in there attempting to right those wrongs, but I have little doubt. I mean, I have little faith that he's going to actually do it. So that leaves us at a point where it's just better because he's not a moron, and that's it. That's literally where I'm sitting right now. It's only better.
He's not an overt racist.
Yep. He's not out and out. He's just background. Right. It's background noise racist.
And listen, truth be told, and we discussed this recently, maybe he's changed a bit.
I mean, it's hard to not change at least a little bit.
Right.
Especially spending that much time with Obama Not that I think that Obama is some like savior or anything like that, but he has a new perspective,
Right.
based on a relationship that he would have never otherwise had with someone that had a position of power above him that was also black.
Right.
He made friends with him, so it's new for him to be moving in this direction. Do I think he learned from it? I think it would be hard not to.
Right.
But for that matter, Obama is kind of a mess himself, so whatever. Like, all he learned was the social aspect. Everything else is unchanged.
Right.
He is still corporate. He's still going to serve those interests. And nothing is going to be better. So, miss me with it.
I mean, it'll be better than it was, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be good.
It doesn't make it good.
Right. Because he's, Trump did a lot of things that were negative for a lot of people. And yeah, Biden can undo some of that stuff, but that's just a start. We need real action for us regular folk. And I don't really know.
That shit ain't coming.
I don't really think that's coming. I don't know if Joe can even really move very far in that direction. And to be fair, that's not all on him. That goes for the government as a whole.
100%.
Because I don't think the government, as we discussed earlier, talking about the financial aspect of it and how that's all tied in, I don't think the government necessarily serves any of our interests as regular, normal people. And I think there are some people that want to do more for us regular people. And sadly, those people, not by coincidence, those people are the ones that everybody's screaming socialist about.
Yep.
Because that's the easy keyword that's going to get people to turn on them. But
it's so predictable and boring and just pure bullshit. I hate it.
The trick is to see through that bullshit.
But most people cannot.
Most people cannot, and truth be told, a lot of people don't want to. A lot of people are happy to be spoon-fed their bullshit and
just run with it.
And be told how to think and how to do things. And that's the real problem, because that's why we are where we are. And the best thing that you can do is try to get past that bullshit and use that brain you got to actually do some real thinking and some real research and get out of this spoon-fed mentality. Because I said before, and I firmly stick by it, the biggest problem was never Trump. The biggest problem was the dummies following him that just want to be spoon-fed. And it goes way past Trump, and it goes way past any one politician, and it goes to the way the system is built and the misinformation that flies around. And it goes to you as an independent thinker, which is the biggest enemy of all of these people.
I mean, we talked about it before. I think it was just last week we talked about it. The fact that all of our testing and all of our metrics that everybody is now all running towards when it comes to school is about completing that spin around the wheel, that just making everybody little tiny cogs to keep the machine going and not actually bringing in any critical thinking whatsoever.
You know what it's like? The best way to compare it? It's like the Matrix. because all you're doing is just you're in that little pod going through the simulation and you're just powering the machine. That's what it comes down to. And the trick is to not do that and to actually be more than that. The biggest enemy, well, let me say this. The pattern that you see in a lot of different societies and a lot of different things, like when we talk about QAnon or when they talk about cults, when they talk about all these other things, the biggest thing you see is that the biggest commodity and the biggest enemy of all of these things is knowledge. The biggest thing that they're scared of is that one with a brain that can get past the programming.
Yep, absolutely.
All these dictatorships and cults and stuff like that, one of the biggest things they do is that they control the information. Just like Trump with all of his misinformation. Just
deflection tactics.
Yeah, it's just like all these other things. It's controlling information and disseminating information that fits your narrative and not necessarily the truth.
Well, so the truth doesn't matter anymore.
That true information is the biggest enemy of all of these types of situations. Because, yeah, you're right, Len, the truth doesn't matter. But that's if you're following their programming. Use your own brain, think your own way, stop falling for the okie doke, and think for yourself. Don't be spoon-fed by social media and all this shit. That's another thing that I mentioned a million times, which was people talking about Russia influencing the election. The problem wasn't Russia. The problem was all the people who just want to be spoon-fed who they're going to vote for by social media or by whatever other influences around instead of using their own brains to make up their own mind.
So what I'll say to that is that Russia figured out that you idiots aren't smart enough to think for yourself.
Exactly.
And they ran with it.
Exactly. Can't blame them.
I wasn't suckered by that bullshit. But some of y'all were.
A lot.
I'm just saying some. I'm not trying to call any names. But we know a number of people who have now gone by the wayside. They are no longer trusted friends. Mm-hmm. They have hit the bricks for all intents and purposes because they're just not smart enough to stick around.
And just to be clear, by the way, I'm not talking about 2016. Yeah, that was when this whole idea of Russian interference started.
But you still continued to buy into it long after.
Yeah, there was a whole perfect storm that I've talked about before, which led to Trump's election. I'm talking about this year. First of all, yeah, maybe they're not talking about it like they were, but if you think there wasn't some sort of, I won't say interference, but let's say influencing, because if they're a famous person on Instagram, then influencing is cool. But if they're Russian bots, all of a sudden influencing is terrible. It's funny how that works, right?
Right. But they're in the comments. They're everywhere.
But that's what I mean. Influencing is everywhere.
All over Twitter.
Influencing is everywhere, but all of a sudden, when Russia does it, it's so terrible. But when, some other stupid bitch that goes to parties does it, it's great.
So, I'm not a Twitter user per se. I have a Twitter account. I've been on there, but if you see these posts, and then the people in the posts replying in the thread, you can easily pick out the bots. And if you're
sure.
not smart enough to pick them out, you don't deserve a vote. You should be smart enough to look at this and go, oh, no. Pete 0679321 is not a real fucking person. You know, like you can just look at these names and be like, no viable human would ever pick this. This is a bot.
Yeah, but it goes back to my Nigerian prince thing.
Yeah, and so many people got caught by that.
Right.
And it's so embarrassing. Like, how dumb are you?
I mean,
real dumb.
Yeah,
real extra dumb.
You know the answer to that, but that's
real super
that's
extra fucking dumb.
That's the point of this conversation, because there's plenty of dumb to go around. But as I said, the problem is not.
That's the name of this episode. I know I named it, pre-named it, but you got to name it. There's plenty of dumb to go around.
Plenty of dumb to go around.
Yes.
Perfect. But that's the problem. Everybody is influenced, but all of a sudden now influencing is bad when it's Russia. You know, when it's some pop star or some chick that's only known for going to parties for free and getting swag bags.
Or having the fattest butt on the planet or whatever. Like, whatever you want.
That's okay.
It's totally fine.
Yeah, that kind of influencer is fine.
Drink this tea, it's going to make your tummy flat. Side note, it's not going to make your tummy flat.
Spoiler. But that's the whole point. And we can't blame Russia, because Russia just figured out how stupid we are, like Len said.
They just ran with it. They're like, oh, these idiots.
Yeah. Like, oh, these dummies will fall for anything. Let's try this. And that's how it is. And that's how we got here. That's the problem.
Just the most gullible bunch of idiots on the planet.
Absolutely. And there's no hope. I just don't know how we turn that around.
I'm personally not gullible, but I live here amongst you idiots. So it makes me just as gullible as the rest of you. Because if you're getting sucked in, I'm getting sucked in with you.
Yeah.
I have no choice in the matter.
There's only so much that you can do. Because in the end, if you're surrounded by people like that, there's nothing you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the bottom line of it. There's nothing we can do about it. All we can do is try to be influencers ourselves and tell you people, use your brain.
They don't want to.
Stop following the bullshit. Stop following the bullshit. Use your brain. And
America, take your head out of your ass.
Yeah, pretty much. Or at least, all 10 Americans that listen to this show.
Hey, I'll take every single one of those 10. Thank you all for being here.
Yes.
Especially if you made it to the end of this episode.
All right, with that, I think it's time that we call this a night before we rant more and more about the same shit. Because let's face it, we've been doing it for how many months now?
Technically, we started in April, so we're 10 months in.
True. Yeah, we didn't officially air till June, but we started preparing in April.
Getting practice. Now we're a well-oiled machine.
Well, I don't know if I take it that far.
Maybe not, but whatever. It doesn't matter.
I mean, judging by the length alone. Oh, wait. That's what she said.
Hey, boy.
Oh!
Think about it this way, though. For the amount of hours we've talked this year, we have definitely more hours on air than most shows that even air like 3 times a week. Because we talk too fucking much.
We go.
We get in.
And we go, and we don't fucking stop.
The Energizer Bunny in this bitch.
Yeah, with just to wrap this up, and
then talk 3 more hours.
Two or 3 more hours. That's how it is.
But not tonight.
Nope.
Give us a call out. Let's do it
right now. TheUpgradePodcast.net for all of your social media and listening needs. I am Gary Muttley. He is Len Carmichael. We are The Upgrade. And we will catch you guys again very soon. Peace.
Peace.